Okay, we are recording. Mario, how are you today?
I'm pretty good, thank you so much. It's a pretty cold day in Germany, but I'm really good. How are you?
I'm equally cold, mate. I'm sitting in my little kind of recording studio shed at the end of my garden, and I've had to put a coat on to sit indoors. It's absolutely freezing in the UK at the moment. I think it's about -4.
Oh wow, yeah, we have about the same, and it actually, I don't know why, but it rained, so everything's like really there's ice everywhere. So you
Yeah.
gotta watch your step if you go out.
Well, I know you're in Germany, but whereabouts are you? In fact, it looks like a home studio. Is that where you create the magic?
Yeah, it's not at home, but it's a studio, yeah, and it's kind of cozy. So I think that home studio is just the best word to describe it. Yeah, we're here in our little studio, and that's where we create the music, yeah.
Oh,
And just
fantastic.
next door, there's our rehearsal space, so that's where we do the loud stuff.
Oh, fantastic. Well, look, I'm going to start your playlist. And Mary, I'm going to ask you for track one to tell me the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
It's The Doors with Backdoor Man, and I have a specific version of it. It's a live version of the record, Absolutely Live. It just starts with a scream by Jim Morrison, and it's I don't know, it goes through all your bones, and it's just crazy. So I think I've picked that one because of that. And yeah, I think the question is actually pretty hard to say the song with the greatest intro. It's like that wasn't really easy for me, but I think that this song does it. I think it's song number 4 on the Absolutely Live. So
Yeah.
if you give that a listen, it's crazy.
It's strange. Every time I interview musicians on this show, everyone says the same that this is the hardest question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Fantastic. Um, if I want to talk to you about intros, and I'm interested to know, as a relatively new band, if we're not sort of talking about bands like the Doors and such, we're talking about, your band that has kind of sort of made its mark in the time scale where Spotify is very, a very important means to market your music and to get on the right playlists. And we're also seeing bands utilizing TikTok and to kind of get the music out there. The the sort of pressure to hook people quickly can come down to that intro, because in a world where, I guess Spotify is saturated with music, everywhere, you haven't got to look hard to find new music on Spotify. So I guess it means that a lot of artists are trying to kind of do something to stand out from the pack. And I just wonder the things like utilizing intros and trying to make music as instant and to grab them in the first 20 seconds and to try and get on those Spotify playlists and to get to get the music sort of popping and going viral on TikTok. Does any of that filter through into your creative process when you're writing?
Actually, not really. Because once we're in the rehearsal space or once we're in the creative process, we don't really think about our audience and especially not about TikTok. And I know that it's a thing nowadays because it's the medium that carries the music, and the medium that carries the music has always shaped the music. It's the same thing with vinyl or with CDs or anything, you know. For example, with CDs, there's one thing I've just came about that I was wondering about these hidden tracks that were sometimes in front of the first track on the CD. If you reverse the track and then you get to the hidden track, or it was something like on Nevermind by
Yeah,
Nirvana.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was
of
like
course.
after the last track, there's 3 minutes of silence and then
Yeah.
starts a track. And you don't have that nowadays. You don't have that on Spotify because there's no use for that because no one's gonna listen to 3 minutes of silence and then or no one's gonna I don't know the CD version of that, the hidden track after the last track was probably discovered by most people who've just like kept the radio on and just kept the CD playing and then oh there's another song coming.
Yeah.
Wow. Didn't see that coming. So yeah, that's not a thing anymore, I
And
think.
that was such a treat, wasn't it? When you found
Yeah,
that, it was like, oh my God, what's this? There's like a
yeah,
bonus hidden track. That was such a joyous thing to discover. And you're right, that doesn't exist anymore.
yeah, and I think having the taking the time to have a CD and the booklet, and to like, if I remember when I bought my first CDs, I really didn't have any money. So once you bought a CD, you took it home and you've listened to it. And once if you didn't really get the CD the first time you've listened to it, then you've listened to it like 20 times until you got it. And that's something that you don't have nowadays, because if you don't like anything on Spotify, you just switch over to the next artist. That's it. So you got to hook the people. I totally understand that, and that's maybe a thing why we're not as successful as other artists, but we really believe in music first and art first, and we really believe in albums as a record, as a art form, I think, because you can tell like a whole story, and it's like writing a book. You have different chapters, and on a record you have different songs that tell different stories and from different angles, and that's really interesting, I think. And we're not a band that's making music for these hypes or these TikTok trends. And in case that happens, in case like a song of us goes viral, then that's a funny coincidence, but it wasn't constructed to go viral in the first place. So
I want to touch on something you said a moment ago, and I have these conversations with lots of guests about, trends in music, and I love that musicians still write an album to be a body of work and to be listened to as a whole, because I think, I love the way that music evolves, and I love the fact that everything is very accessible to you. But I think with that, you kind of take it for granted. And to echo what you said about having sort of a certain amount of money where you could afford one CD, if it didn't strike you straight away, like you say, you would listen to it over and over and over again. But one of the things that I do think is lost in the kind of more digital format, by that I mean sort of streaming services, is the album artwork, and to not just to look at the front cover, but when you got that CD or you got that piece of vinyl, I would devour all the sleeve notes. I would be like, oh, right, that guy produced that. Oh, he produced that. And I wanted to kind of know everything about it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. And one thing I have to say first, because don't get me wrong, I'm not against streaming services, or I'm not against the whole new movement of music. It's just different, and you gotta accept that, and you gotta respect it. It's just different, yeah. And times change. It's like it wouldn't be. I don't know. We tend to go. Yeah. I'm not too sentimental about the past. So it's just different now. But I'm happy that I experienced that time, buying one CD and spending time with it, and reading all the liner notes and reading the lyrics and getting to know the artist a bit more, and looking at the pictures or the drawings or anything. And yeah, we try to cover both sides of it. We
Yeah.
obviously have our music on the streaming services, but we also put a lot of work and thought into our vinyl. For example, we have for this one, we have, for example, two different vinyls. We have a standard vinyl, which is pretty easy, and for those who like a cheap vinyl, I think. Well, cheap is relative these days, but and then we also have like a deluxe edition that looks like a book. It's going to be pretty massive, a hardcover book that you open up and you have the vinyl on one side, and then
Oh,
you have
amazing.
this big booklet with more than 30 pages, where I I took the time to write a few pages about the whole process of doing this record, and what how it came about, and some thoughts on it. And then you have all the lyrics, and then you have some pictures and stuff like that. And we really, I think it takes way more time to do that, but there's only probably 1,000 of these.
Yeah.
And if you have like 100,000 monthly listeners or something, you have way more people on the streaming services. But these 1,000 people that buy this record and have that at home, and spent their time with it, they really deserve to get something great, I think.
Absolutely.
So we took our time, and I hope it turned out good. At this time, I've never had that before, but this time we had 2 test pressings. So if you do a vinyl, you normally have one test pressing, you listen to it, it's normally okay, and then everything's cut right, and then um the the process of pressing all the records can start. This time we had to do it twice, because one thing that's also corresponding to the thing I've said earlier, where I've said that the medium carries the music, and the medium always shapes the music, is something that we nowadays don't think about, because we do music just like we want to, and if we can put out everything on Spotify. But one thing that I haven't thought about was that on our side A on the vinyl, the last song contained a lot of bass, and that's a thing that the medium vinyl doesn't really like, because once it gets too narrow to the
Yeah.
um to the point where the side is finished, it doesn't really it's not really the best thing for the sound. So it was pretty distorted, the song, and we had to like cut it again and master it a bit quieter, and yeah, put some thought into that. And I thought about, if we would have lived in the 60s or 70s or 80s, we probably would have done the playlist differently, because we
Yeah.
knew, okay, this song contains a lot of bass. We have to put it on the side B as a first track. And
Yeah.
that's so again, the medium shapes the music. And yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Fantastic. I mean, the Doors wouldn't have had that problem. They didn't have a bass player.
I thought about that, yeah. I mean, they had a few bass players at sessions.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, I know what you mean, and it's yeah, a crazy band
Oh,
having no
fantastic,
bass
man.
player, man.
I'm going to ask you for track 2 to tell me, please, the first song that you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you.
I thought a lot about that, and I thought I'm gonna give you the truth, because I really I remember sitting in front of the record player and listening to CD by my sister, and she was a big fan of East 17, and the song is called Stay Another Day, and it's really cheesy, but I was a child, and I really remember listening to that song when we moved. Our family moved quite a lot back then, and yeah, I was always a bit emotional about moving, and I remember listening to that song. I don't know how old I was, probably very, very young, but yeah.
Now, I think that was like maybe 91, 92, I think, when that came out. I mean, that is a huge Christmas record in the UK. Like
Yeah, really?
every
Yeah.
Christmas. Oh, it's huge. Like the guy that wrote that must make some serious royalties every year from that record.
Nice one. Yeah, I thought I'm gonna choose them, obviously, because I thought, people from the UK probably know East 17, but
Yeah.
they've been huge in Germany as well back then, and my sister
Yeah.
was a huge fan when she was a child, so yeah.
So so whereabouts was growing up? You said you moved a lot. Where was the sort of where's your earliest memories? And tell me a little bit about what home was like. Was it musical?
No, not really. First of all, I was born in Heidelberg, which is in yeah, it's not really, but it's kind of in the middle of Germany. And when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I moved to Austria. So I've been finishing school in Austria, and once I had finished that, I moved to Munich, because it was the next biggest city. And
Yeah.
I was already in a band with Marcus, and we were already best friends and wanted to pursue music. So I couldn't move to Barcelona or Berlin, because then we, yeah, would have had to split up the band. And
Yeah.
so I moved to Munich, and didn't know a thing about it. So yeah, ended up here, and I'm still here. So it's a great place to live, I think. Um, yeah, my
It's
home wasn't really, my parents didn't make music at all, but our record player was always the center of the living room, and it wasn't really the TV. And I was always drawn to the record player. My parents told me that my first favorite track was Runaway by Bon Jovi. When I was 2 years old, I ran to the record player and telling them, "Yeah, I want to hear Runaway, I want to hear Runaway." And yeah, that's probably why why the record player had such an I must have drawn a lot of inspiration from that, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, Bon Jovi was one of my first shows I went to with my dad when I was something like 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
So
I'm interested to ask you when you said about you didn't go to Barcelona or Berlin. One of the reasons I set this podcast up was to kind of sort of talk about where people grew up and the scene that was around them and what opportunities were there. And I live about 20 minutes outside of London, and I'm always fascinated by people's kind of thought process that, right, okay, we're in a band, we've now got to move to London because we've got to make it, and that's where it happens. Was that very much the kind of, is that a mindset that you've experienced through friends and colleagues that have relocated to Berlin? Because, as an Englishman, I look at Berlin, and the music that's come out of Berlin, has blown me away, and has shaped a lot of my musical taste. Is there that kind of desire that if you're a creative, you gravitate towards Berlin, like maybe it does in London and the UK?
absolutely, absolutely. It's Berlin is like a magnet, and especially for creative people, not only in the music scene, but in all the creatives tend to go there. I think it's obviously not all the creatives move there, but it's a magnet. It's probably comparable to London. But then again, in the UK, you probably have like Manchester as a place where,
Liverpool.
yeah, Liverpool, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
and um, so Berlin always played a big role for me, and I was always very inspired if I went to Berlin, and it's where most of the record actually got recorded outside of Munich. So
Yeah.
I went to studio there every once in a while just to like yeah, it's great to live here, but it's also great to leave from time to time. So yeah, I'm basically very open to that. Since my family moved a bit in my childhood, I'm not really drawn to one place that much. I don't really have this hometown where I return to every Christmas and have all my friends there.
Sure.
That was a bit scattered since I've lived in 3 or 4 different places before turning 20. So um, yeah, and all these places were very different from each other. Especially, I mean, I've lived in Austria in a village where we had 3,000 people living there.
Wow.
So basically nothing. But I've went to school where a lot of musicians started out. So we had a few bands there, and we had like a location where you could play. And some of these bands are still going, and some of the musicians went to Berlin, some went to the UK, some went somewhere else, and we just kept doing what we're doing. And for us, it was always important to have the band as the center of our lives, and to have a place to be centered around a place where we could rehearse, because
Yeah.
we came from we were this jamming band that wrote their songs together and in a room, and we had to like meet 3 times a week and just play our songs and write new songs together. That was probably the vibe where we started. And nowadays, especially with making music on the computer, you can do it from everywhere, and you can
Sure.
collaborate with people all over the world. But for us, yeah, we were this all people in the room band. Yeah.
You mentioned school a moment ago, so that ties in nicely with the next track. I'm going to ask you to tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school, please, Mario.
Yeah, I've chosen 2 things. First of all, a band called Audio Parade and a song called Nintendo 89. It's a song by a band that is not really well known, and I think they haven't been really active in the last couple of years, but when I first heard this song, it blended really this punk rock thing with very, very emotional um lyrics and melodies. So that's where something happened to me. I think I really remember listening to that song at a party and thinking, wow, that's the thing you can do. You can take the energy of punk rock music, and but be very, very emotional. And yeah, so I was drawn to that emo thing a lot. And yeah, Audio Create. I think if you don't know them,
I don't
uh,
know that track. No.
you can check it out. It's yeah, I don't know. It reminds me of back then. And I took a record by Blink, the live record they did, the Mark, Tom, and Travis show, because the whole record, I've been listening to that a lot in school. And yeah, it reminds me of teenage days.
Did you know what you wanted to do when you was at school? Was music a viable option?
Yeah. It I in my head, it was always what I wanted to do, but it wasn't really an option, because once you tell a teacher or once you tell your parents, I want to do music, and you live in a 3,000 souls city or not city, village in Austria, you're not taken seriously. No one thinks that this is possible. And it took me a while. And the first real musician I've met in Munich, when I was working at a bar and in a music club. And then I I kind of had to get my head around the possibility of actually doing music. I didn't really think that this was actually something that was possible, because I only knew that from the TV or the radio or something. But yeah, getting to know real musicians made me realize that these are only just normal people, and that's being a musician is a normal job,
Yeah.
for some people. You have to be really lucky, of course, but then again, there's a possibility to do that. And it was, yeah, really inspiring to me, um to see that it's actually possible to do that. And I would have love to know that a little earlier, because I think I've started at university to become a teacher, for German and English language. And that wasn't really something that I really wanted to do. I didn't really want to be a teacher. I wanted to be a musician, but I was probably not seeing the possibility. So
Sure.
yeah, I should have done that earlier, I think. But nevertheless, I'm here now, and I'm pretty happy that I have the chance to do what I do.
Was you, and was you and are you driven?
A lot, yeah. I was really driven, actually, by the thought of creating something. It was never about being successful to a certain extent or playing the biggest shows ever. I always only wanted to play shows, so we could afford doing a next record. It was always about creating and writing, because as as cheesy as it sounds, but music is like a diary, and it's a great way to express your feelings. And especially if you're young and you have these mixed feelings about the world and about everything, and you don't understand everything, and you don't understand why do we have things like this and that. Music is a great place to go with these questions and to find your answers and to feel at home when you don't feel at home, or you feel very alienated by the rest of the world. So I really experienced that during our shows as well. We have a great audience, I think, and there are people who come over and over again, and we know them personally, and we see them feeling at home at shows. And I mean, there must be a reason why they come. There are people who've been to more than 100 shows of us, and
Wow.
which is absolutely mind-blowing. It means that they traveled a lot to see us. And um, these people feel at home at shows. And I bet that we're not the only band they go to. They go to other bands as well, and just feel connected with music, with loud music, with the frequencies that are in the room. And yeah, what I love about shows is when everyone's the same, because the lights are off and it doesn't really matter where you come from or how
Yeah.
big or small you are, or um that's yeah, your background is not important in that moment. It's just about the vibe and the rhythm. And yeah,
Love that. Love that. Tell me about the first record you remember buying from a record store.
I wrote down probably a Nirvana record, Live at the Muddy Banks of Wishkam. And
Wow. Yes, please. What a record.
yeah, it's a pretty hard one for like a 10-year-old. But um I remember two things about that. First of all, um my parents used to have a few live records. I think that's why I bought a live record by Nirvana and not like the Nevermind classic or In Utero. Um, and I bought it at a store where they had loads of sports stuff, but they also had a few CDs, which was funny because I bet no store has got that nowadays, because everyone's like CDs are over
Yeah.
in these kind of stores. But back then it was a thing. And yeah, I bought that. And my mom, who couldn't talk English back then, she bought me a shirt by Nirvana in a vacation. I bought the CD and we went on vacation, and in one of these little stores there, I've discovered a shirt by Nirvana, and it said, "I hate myself and I want to die." And
Yeah.
I said, "Mom, can I have that?" And she bought that. She bought that because she couldn't understand what it was saying. And I thought, you know, looking back on that nowadays, I was like, wow, man, that's so wide. I was wearing that shirt and went to a doctor with my mom, and he was looking at the shirt and was like, "Do you think that this is a good message to walk around with?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I got that from my mom." Yeah.
Tell me about the impact that I'm always fascinated because I'm 50 years of age, Mario, and I was lucky to be, I think maybe sort of 18, 19 when Nirvana exploded, and I called it at exactly the right time. It was guitar music just took over my world, took over so many clubs and pubs, and Nirvana at the forefront of it. That obviously was a gateway into Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and the sub pop bands and such. But I still DJ to this day at a venue that I run in, like an alternative rock venue, and it's crazy to see generation after generation after generation request Nirvana. And tell me about your relationship with that band, and how you discovered them and what they meant to you, if anything.
They meant a lot. Yeah. Discovering Nirvana, I vividly remember hearing Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time, and it's such a classic. And I I had my first band back then, and the drummer was a Nirvana fan, and I've never heard of the band. I was, yeah, probably 10, 11, 12 years old. Uh, just funny side joke, funny side fact, but the band could play one song, and it was Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, and that was it. Yeah.
Just one song.
Yeah, it was just one song, and we played it at the school at the last day of school. Um yeah, we played it twice because we just couldn't play one song. Yeah.
Love it.
So, but yeah, he showed me the riff of Smells Like Teen Spirit on the guitar, and there are these chunks in between the notes, and I was like, wow, you can do that? Oh, that's cool. And tried to play it, and then he put on the song, and I was like, what's that? And that was, I mean, that was way after Kurt has already passed, and it was still a great thing to discover that music. And I think it still is for people nowadays to discover Nirvana and to discover the people behind the band, the stories behind the band, the stories behind the records, and the feelings behind the records, and why is In Utero the way In Utero is, because Nevermind was that big, and what did that feel like on the Nirvana side, and that it really interests me. Um, I've just listened to the audiobook by Dave Grohl, for example, The Storyteller, and I thought the most interesting chapter was the one where he was talking about the early days of Nirvana, where they played small clubs in front of like a few hundred people. That was the most interesting for me. And um, because this band had like this vibe that said, I really mean what I say.
Yeah.
And I remember Kurt saying in one of his interviews, I don't know if that's real or if that's just imagination of mine, but um, he said something like, if I'm gonna be if I'm gonna be rich or if I'm gonna be a rock star, what are you going to do? And he answered, I'm gonna buy new trousers. And that was so real and so honest in a way. I don't know if that's true or not, but it resonated with me,
Yeah.
like staying a normal person and just
I, don't-
doing
I
that normal shit.
I think it's, when to go back to the first question I asked you about intros and hooking people straight away. As much as Nirvana made this glorious racket of noise, never overlook the pop sensibilities that Kurt had. Because if you listen to Nevermind, every single track on that record is just a pop classic. It's like it's so infectious. You've got the quite loud, but every chorus is just so catchy. Every kind of verse is just hook ridden. It's like it's just a perfect pop album. I think, to this day you can play. There's not many albums in like rock clubs where you can literally, maybe excusing something in a way, but any other track you can play in a club and it goes off. Tracks that weren't singles. You play Territorial Pissings or fucking hell, Drain You. You play Drain You, and like, I mean, for intros, Drain You, how good is that? That just instant intro, and you're straight in.
Ah, yeah,
And
good choice.
I was lucky enough a few years ago. I had Butch Vig on this podcast, and I was chatting to him, and I asked him what was his greatest intro, and I was like, "Come on, man, you've got to say Teen Spirit," and he didn't, but he sort of referenced um, when he was producing that record, and he said the first time that he heard that song being played, he said when them drums kicked in after that intro, he said I could only equate it to, let's get this right, standing in a house and it collapsing on top of you. The When that drops, when it all kicks in with Grohl on drums and whatnot, he just said it was so big. Like, I just thought, what am I going to do with this? And
Mm.
and I think, I know that Kurt was more leaning towards that kind of Albini style of production, that obviously come a little later on. But I love Nevermind. I think as a pop record, I think it's perfect.
Do you think if Kurt would have um be like if he had more time on this planet and with 50 or 60 years old, or maybe even with 35, he would look back on Nevermind and he would think, you know what? Yes, I wanted to do In Utero and I wanted to do the Albini sound, but that's a damn good record.
Yeah, it's great.
I think that this whole success that Nirvana had with Nevermind, I can't imagine what that must have felt like back then, and the horrible side of things. Also, I have no idea what that's like, obviously, but it's such a good record, and it's I think especially. Sorry, man. I'm lost for words now. There's so many things I want to say about Nirvana because um let me just say one thing about just what the band means to you. When I first listened to the MTV Unplugged, I was expecting, of course, I wasn't expecting anything back then, but But now looking back on that, you probably would think, okay, why didn't they play the big hits? Because they were a band that just did what they want to do, and that's a thing that's so important. That's such a big inspiration for us nowadays. Just like do what you feel like, and don't think about all the expectations that are on you. Just do what you want to do.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
something that I often think about while creating music. Um, because it's the same thing with us. It's we just wrote a song that is called Funeral, and when we recorded that, I thought, wow, that song is really poppy, and it's really different from the things that we did before. And now you tend to get a little nervous about releasing it because people could say, wow, that's pop. I don't like that. It's not as energetic or not as rocky as this stuff you do uh, besides that song. But I tend to go back and remember these bands like Nirvana or other bands that just do what they want to do, and then you find the courage again, and
Mm.
you draw inspiration from that, and you put out a song that's different, and that's what these bands did, and they taught us. They teach bands like us to never record the same record again, to always progress and go further. Actually, one thing I would love to ask Butch Vig would be, what did he think about In Utero when he listened to that
Yeah,
back then?
yeah, that's a great shout. Yeah, absolutely. There's rumors. I mean, around the time of Unplugged, there was so many like Pearl Jam done Unplugged and REM done Unplugged, and I know that Michael Stipe was very close to Kurt because I think there's a track on Monster called "Let Me In," which is a kind of ode to trying to get through to Kurt before the end. And there's I read, I'm sure I read that Michael Stipe said that we made music together. There's demos of Kurt and Michael Stipe making music together, and what I would do to hear that, because at that point in music, them two artists were everything for me. Like, I thought they were probably the two biggest bands on the planet at that time as well. And the thought that they made this music, and I kind of like the fact that if it is in existence, that Michael Stipe's like, look, this is only my take on it. I'm not gonna put it out there because it's not got Kurt's say so. Do you know what I mean? I quite like that. I
Yeah,
think it's
wow, that's you gotta respect that big
yeah,
time.
absolutely. Okay, let's go clubbing. Tell me about the song that soundtracked you going clubbing.
Yeah, I've never went. I'm not a clubber. So I chose a song by Venby. The song's called Gutter, and yeah, Venby is like a really new artist, I think, in the UK. She does this poppy drum and bass stuff, and she just put out a record called Zero Experience, and I really love it. So I chose a song by her, but yeah, going back on that, I think I asked the other guys in the band, and Marcus gave me a nice inspiration. The track "Closing Time."
By
Um,
Semisonic.
yeah, because that was always the track that was played when the bar that we used to go to closed. So yeah, but I probably should choose something
Yeah.
a band called Moderat, but that's the next one I
Okay.
chose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that guy from Semisonic has gone on to be some prolific songwriter that writes for other artists. Apparently, he writes these huge, super successful songs now for various pop artists. Which I kind of guess when you hear "Secret Smile" and "Closing Time," he could write a catchy song, right?
I don't know. I know nothing about that band.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just
Well, I
know
mean,
this is one song, and
yeah,
yeah, I probably I should look them up.
yeah. They're not that great. They're not that great. Um, okay, right. Well, look, let's take you home. Favorite song from an artist from your home county?
Yeah, I chose Ghost Mother by the band Moderat. It's a trio. Do you know them?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's such a great band, and yeah, in 2016 they put out their third record, and this record blew my mind. It was such a big inspiration to me, and back then I was really listening to a lot to electronic music, and it found its way into our music as well. If you listen to like the 2018 record Chaos, we have this 5 minute track with very electronic sounds and bass drums and stuff like that. But yeah, Moderat, such a great band. I had the pleasure to see them live once, and it was, yeah, fantastic.
Well, do you think that there's something in, in the water in Germany that, electronic music has to kind of find its way into you some way? Because for me, if I think Germany and music, I think of electronic music straight away. I mean, yes, of course, I think, the Bowie stuff that he done there, and Lou Reed and such. But for me, it's always, going to be lots of the stuff that was on Mute Records that, that was coming from Germany, and obviously Kraftwerk. And is that something that is in the very fabric of maybe Berlin, but in Germany, like that kind of love and of electronic music?
Yeah, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot, because I was really thinking about what is the identity of our music and as well of German music. And we were inspired big time by artists from the US or from the UK, and we were always drawn to these countries music wise. And I mean, so much of the stuff that everyone's listening to here is from the US or from the UK, for example. So they have a big influence on us. But what is it that Germany does that, music wise, that they export into the world? And that's electronic music. That's a lot of techno, and there are a lot of techno artists in Germany that play all around the world, and there are not that many rock or pop or hip hop acts from Germany that play all around the world. So that's when we recorded our last record, Dark, I was really thinking a lot about who are we as a band and where do we belong and what do we want to sound like. Because obviously a question that we get is, why do you sing in English? I mean, you're not a native speaker. Why should you sing in English? Why don't you sing in German? And there's a big hype on German music here, as well. And we always wanted to play outside of first of all, outside of your home city and then home country. And I want to travel, and I want to travel with our music. So singing in English and being inspired by bands from the US and from the UK was like an obvious choice for me. And it's just a universal language. But I wanted to implement something that is, and I wanted to talk about topics and implement sounds that were like that showed a bit where we're from. I've listened to a podcast by Rick Rubin and Kenny Beats once, where Kenny Beats talks about like these different rhythms and styles that were developed in different countries and originated in different scenes, and that was so inspiring to me. And I thought that we as a band, we shouldn't like implement, or we shouldn't cover other bands or other scenes or other countries or anything. We should do our own thing and find our own thing and develop something that takes all the influences we have and do something with that. So electronic music obviously found its way into our music.
Yeah.
But it's funny because growing up, I couldn't really, I didn't, I never listened to techno that much. And it was something that came in, I don't know, when I turned 20 or something. And I always had a rock phase. I always had a hip hop phase. And yeah, I love some styles of pop music as well. And then it opened up, to me. Yeah, the electronic music is it's really interesting. And um, I especially love the vibe at in these clubs where everyone can is very open, and it's I mean, you obviously know these stories about German clubs where there's crazy things going on, like in Berghain or somewhere. But the essence of that is that you can really express yourself and you can be who you want to be. Um, and that's a thing that's I don't know. It's in electronic music. Uh, it's combined with that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask you for your last track, and this is where I ask you to tell me a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to hear.
Yeah, I chose a track called Limbo by the band Oma Block. It's, how would I describe it? First of all, it's electronic music as well, I think, but it's handmade music. They do analog stuff and they have a really nice setup with a few synths and a guitar and vocals, and they do everything live. And two women from Munich actually. And I don't think that a lot of people in the UK have heard of them, so I chose that track.
Fantastic. Well, we can make it a lot easier for people to listen to that track, Mario, because we put together a little playlist on Spotify for people that basically involves all of the songs that we've spoken about today, and obviously your music as well, which accompanies this chat. So people can go and explore all of the songs that we've spoken about today. I mean, we need to talk about the band a little bit. I mean, what's happening? New record?
Yeah, we're gonna put out a record in February, and we're gonna jump on a tour with Enter Shikari and Fever 333, and which is
I
gonna be
mean, what
massive.
great two bands to go on tour with, man.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I have to pinch myself every time I say that.
Because Ralph sang with you, right?
Yeah, we have a song on the record together. It's called Gloves, and that was actually a live goal for us to have a song with him, and we've gotten to know each other back
Nicest guy
in.
ever, right?
Yeah, he's absolutely he's so humble, he's so, I don't know, for us, we've been listening to Enter Shikari for a long time, and we've applied to all the tours that they did all the time, and we probably never heard back, but we've done this track, and then the management or our asked us to open up for them in the UK last year. So we did that on their tour in February, and playing with Enter Shikari in the UK, got us very intimidated. We were like, wow, we're shaking, but we're gonna do that, and it's gonna be great. So we went over there and we've met these guys, and they're so humble, they're so friendly, they're so nice to us. The crew, the management, the tour management, everyone was so nice to us that we can't thank them enough for that experience, because meeting a band that you're fan of is a great thing itself, but then meeting these people that are really really nice to you and give you a stage to play in front of their audience, and yeah, it's something that we as a band will honestly never forget, and we're gonna carry that on, and yeah, just take that inspiration of creating a good vibe with the bands that you play with, and carry that on.
Love that. And so that tour starts when?
At the end of February, I think. On February 18th, we're gonna start in no, on 19th. We start in Brussels, go to Paris, and then play a few shows in Germany and play Amsterdam as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and we're gonna be back in the UK as well. Not with Ant Shikari, but with our own tour. It's not published at the moment, but it's gonna be in October. And yeah, I've just thought about. I think that we have a European tour with dates in Germany and Netherlands and Paris and Poland and everywhere. And I think most of the dates are actually in the UK.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And if people want to find out more about that, where's the best place to keep up to speed with everything that's happening?
I think it's Instagram, or it's the socials, or we have a homepage as well, and we obviously are on all the streaming services, and you can find our music in various record stores, hopefully.
Absolutely. Well, if it's cool with you, when we put this episode out, we'll tag the band in it. So if people haven't discovered you already, then they can go and do that.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you so much for taking your time.
Mario, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to press stop, but don't go anywhere.